The SDGs won't be achieved with individuals or organizations working in isolation. So partnerships, alliances are needed in order to achieve the goals.
Hello and welcome to the Pathway to Impact podcast series by UIN. My name is Balzhana Razbaeva, Manager Strategic Initiatives at UIN, and I'm your host for today. We have invited Victoria Galan-Muros, Chief of Research and Analysis at the UNESCO International Institute of Higher Education, to delve into the crucial role that universities play in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Join us as we explore the challenges universities face when integrating sustainability into their curricula, research and operations, and discover practical steps that can help you overcome them.
Welcome Victoria Galan-Muros, who is a leading consultant and policy advisor who has worked in the interface between universities, businesses, policymakers for over 15 years and really all over the globe. So more than 50 countries, and Victoria has also co-authored 70 plus technical and consulting reports for European Commission, OECD, UNESCO, DAAD, you name it, all possible governments and organizations all across the globe. So thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us today. We've been grappling with the topic of sustainability for a while now, and we're quite excited to have you today with us. Maybe it would be nice if you could introduce yourself and then we can dive right into it.
Thanks very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to be sharing with you all some of the higher education thoughts and ideas about the topic that I'm very passionate about, which is sustainable development. You've already commented on a bit of my background, and just to maybe start highlighting that currently I am the Chief of Research and Analysis at the UNESCO International Institute of Higher Education, in which this topic is one of our main and core topics.
Having that in mind, I actually wanted to start this conversation by asking what has motivated UNESCO to place such a strong emphasis on sustainable development within higher education institutions?
Just to give you a quick background, we are the only institute in the United Nations which has a mandate, which is to improve higher education systems in all member states. So the institute was established 25 years ago. So UNESCO, as a UN agency, have the SDGs as any other agency as our overarching framework and guide. So at the UNESCO level, we are all encouraged to investigate how does globally education and culture contribute to the SDGs, and then each of the different units like ourselves, how does higher education contribute to the SDGs? So we should dedicate resources to answer that questions, and that's what we're doing. And that's why we're here today.
Lots of questions to unpack, and maybe just to also get a bit of a sense of understanding around SDGs in higher education. I wanted to ask you, how do you perceive the role of higher education institutions in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, and whether, for example, UNESCO has a specific vision for that as well?
So I guess the short answer is that without universities, we're not going to achieve the SDGs. So these 17 SDGs, the 169 targets, revolve in very general terms around social, environmental, and economic issues, or as we say in the UN, people, prosperity, and planet. They're not perfect, they're overly ambitious, but they are a global commitment to save us from ourselves. And we're halfway. We already know that we won't achieve most of them, but it doesn't mean that we should stop working towards them. In this context, universities are the houses where the best educated people in society, so the best talent is at universities. At the same time, they host the majority and often the most cutting edge research. So the most disruptive innovation is also at universities. And this is exactly what we need to face all the current and future global challenges in a sustainable way. We always say that universities not only has to be there and be players, but they actually should lead and be engines for a more sustainable future. The potential of universities to do this, you're not going to find that in any other organization. And maybe because of this, it should be coupled with a responsibility to action. We always say that it's, or should be, part of the university's social responsibility. And for this, we know that universities can or have the potential to contribute to any of the 17 SDGs from any of the 3 missions, plus the management of the university as an organization. But we can go more into details later about this.
It's a very good point. So it's not only about talking about sustainability, but actually walking the talk and also integrating. We have been discussing this for a while now, and how it is important to integrate sustainability, not only as a mindset, but also as a system into research, teaching, and operational practices. So I'm wondering whether you could provide any specific examples of those exemplary universities who are managing to effectively integrate SDGs across those areas of work that universities are doing.
This is always a tricky question in the sense that for us, it's difficult to highlight a specific universities. There are many out there that are doing a great job. We, or me specifically, do not always have all the knowledge or knowledge enough of all the cases to present them necessarily as a good practices. But what I can definitely do is to highlight, in general terms, some of the activities that some of these leading universities are undertaking around the SDGs. For example, let's just talk about the 3 missions. Around education, we see that more and more universities have dedicated courses or dedicated modules available, if not compulsory to all students, on either on sustainability in general, but also sustainability applied to the different disciplines. Let's say sustainable finance, sustainable construction, sustainable agriculture. These might not be courses, but they might be full programs to train the future sustainability specialists. And this could be at a bachelor, but mostly it is happening at a master's, that no more as a specialization. And the third approach within education that we're seeing, and it might be the most sophisticated, is about integrating the SDGs into the curricula. So all the graduates develop a sustainability mindset, no matter what they are specialized in. This is, of course, complex and will require teacher training. So we cannot assume that the lecturers will just know how to do it, but there's definitely universities in which they are already doing this. For research, what we're finding, more universities undertaking more research related to the different SDGs, or parallel to the education example, integrating an SDG approach to all the research, whether it is you wonder questions about gender, you want a question about environmental issues in any of the research that you do. This translating to more research lines, research centers, research projects, PhD programs in this topic, more resources allocated to them. And also we see how more universities are engaging their communities, for example, to co-design their research or aligning their research to their local needs. That's something that more universities are doing. And in respect to engagement, is really varied. This would take the shape, for example, of volunteering staff and students of SDG aspects in the local communities, or to give them direct services. Maybe these are funded by the government as university hospitals, legal clinics, social services, public parks. Often, more and more universities are entering to lifelong learning. And there is some of them that realize or that take the responsibility as an engine of sustainable development in their communities, and they provide lifelong learning courses to disadvantaged communities for the upskilling and reskilling. But maybe this comes in a way in which they support businesses. They support local businesses that are socially or environmentally engaged, or their local and small businesses through incubator, consultancy services, or access to labs or other infrastructure. HES can really make a difference for these local and regional business ecosystems as well. And these are only some of many examples in any of the 3 missions that universities are recently and gradually undertaking.
It sounds like a very complex environment for universities to be in, and especially if they want to instill that change on a systemic level. So cannot be without challenges, I can imagine. What are some of the major obstacles or challenges that universities face when trying to implement SDGs, especially when it comes to all those areas that you have just now described, and how would they usually try to overcome them, or maybe how UNESCO also support them in doing so?
Maybe here I see that one of the major challenges that universities face is when they try to implement the SDGs in their institutions. A lot of university leaders wouldn't know how to do it. It's a new process, how to transition to be more sustainable institutions. And here I have to call some general guidelines for HEI leaders that I drafted last year to systematize their contribution to the SDGs. I divided this process into 10 different steps and considered high-level actions. It's a short document to lead the change in each of them. So they can hopefully help systematize this HEI approach to the SDGs and help them transform, which we're finding is one of the trickiest things. And that's the reason why we created this document, because we were constantly asked for help. And it's, yes, we're committed. Yes, we're going to do it. But how do we do it? So a super quick summary, and I said there are 10 steps. So I'll try to be very brief. And the document will be there for everyone access, but just for you to have an idea. Stage 0 actually is the need to have a common understanding among all the stakeholders of concepts such as sustainability or sustainable development. We know that if we're not clear on concepts, then everything else, it will be a problem or a challenge after that. Stage 1 is about raising the awareness. So the university community need to know the reason why they need to make a transition to a more sustainable university and how this will affect each of them. So this awareness needs to be there. Stage 2 is about the leadership commitment. So the willingness, the responsibility, the intention, and the dedication of resources to a more sustainable HEI. After this, you cannot do this alone. This cannot be a top-down. So you need to engage key stakeholders. Some of them will be inside, some of them will be outside the university. And they should support the university leaders to transition. But they also at the same time need to feel ownership of the process. Once this is all done, there is a need to have a public institution-wide strategy document, and this should be co-designed, it should be co-drafted, and this also should be agreed to set the goals and to guide the whole process. Stage 5 is about the provision of the knowledge to the university community on what to expect. Okay, we already have this document. What can you expect during and after the sustainability transition? And this will be followed by a mapping exercise. This is important because usually universities don't know what they are already doing that contribute to the SDGs, and they are often much more than everyone thinks. So it's good to have mapped out what are we currently doing. And based on that, stage 7 will be about identifying, prioritizing sustainability activities that we're not doing, but we would like to do in the future. And it's based on that mapping. Stage 8, we need resources. We need physical, human, and financial resources to undertake those activities. And in this stage 9, we just have to do it. Define a set of concrete but also actionable projects that are also coordinated and that you can do across the organization. And just to finalize with the stage 10, these should be sustainable in the long term, and you should also ensure that there are new ones started. The document is brief, but details on how these can be done for each of the steps are detailed in that document. So hopefully that is already giving some sort of guidelines for the main struggle and the main challenges that we've seen in higher education institutions, which is the implementation and the integration of these projects within the HEI in a systematic and institution-wide way.
This is a very comprehensive guide, even in the way you have summarized it, and hopefully it will be also very helpful for our attendees here today. Thank you for that, Victoria. How did you create that guideline? Where do the insights come from, just for maybe also for our information, so that also to be able to understand what to look out for when trying to implement those steps within the institutions?
I guess it came from struggles of different organizations. It came from some good practices as well. And then when we pull everything together, it's okay, how can we help? Here's the question that we ask is, how can we help a wide range of different and very different, in some cases, higher education institutions on making this happen with the lack of our own resources to go and help them directly. We wish, but we cannot do that by developing something that is never going to be the same that sitting next to someone and going through something, but it will already be a structure that they will be able to use and then adapt to their own organization.
It's always helpful to have a structured approach, I would say, if there is some clarity around the steps and logic. So with all of the work that you are doing currently, do you already see the impact and certain successes that universities do? The SDGs have been around for a while now, and we're soon going to hit 2030. Is it possible to already measure the impact of those sustainability initiatives within higher education institutions? And if yes, is there something that UNESCO utilizes as a tool, as an approach to do so?
Well, measuring the impacts, Baldwin, is complex. We know that, as measuring the impact of anything else, really. Anything that involves long-term, it's difficult to trace back to the origin. Also, in this specific topic, there are many intangibles. So we cannot measure by money or very concrete figures. And the action also affects many stakeholders. So then you wonder, okay, impact for whom, right? Even though the SDGs have been around for a while, it's fairly recent that universities have been doing this or implementing them in a more conscious or in a more structured or institutional way. So at the end of the day, still for universities, this is considered an emerging topic in a way. So I guess we have to take a step backwards for now from impact and start measuring activities and outputs. So if we go to outputs, these are, for example, the number of graduates in sustainability programs, the research results of those sustainability projects, the creation of sustainable businesses, maybe within the HEI. So those sort of things, we need to start because we're not even measuring that. And that's the problem, that in order to get to measure impact, we need to measure outputs and we need to measure activities. But there's definitely a need to measure, to have indicators, and to make this a topic a bit more concrete. We've been told that by many higher education institutions, and we wonder the same. How can we help a lot of higher education institutions at the same time to measure or to have some sort of indicators around the SDGs? And there is where we create a tool that is called Set for HEI, like SAT number 4 and then HEI. If you put .org after that, you're gonna get to a tool that has, and don't get too nervous here, 400 indicators to measure the different activities and some of them outputs that can be done within HEIs regarding any of the 17 SDGs from 4 different domains: teaching, research, engagement, and the management of the university. You might think that 400 are too many. They are. But this is based on the fact that we do not expect HEIs to contribute to all the SDGs. We wish, but it's not realistic, so we do not expect that. So the idea is that you as a university can select the SDGs or the small set of SDGs in which you are focused or you want to focus. And then when you choose that, you still have enough indicators to measure it, by about 30 approximately in each of them. This is a tool that is online, that is free. We launched it at the end of last year in like a beta version. We asked for more feedback. We incorporated that feedback. We were working with more stakeholders on it and other UN organizations. And we are about to launch it as a final version as soon as we can agree on a launch date with our partners. So that will be very soon. Currently, the indicators are already final. You can do them and you can see the results afterwards, but that's lost. Once we launch the final version, you'll be able to create an account if you want to, and then you can come back after a year, 2 years, and then you can do it again. And then you can see your past results, and then you can track your current results so you can see your improvement. This is a self-evaluation tool, so it's not related to rankings. It's nothing that is going to be public. This is just for universities to be able to track their own progress. And because there are going to be always many activities that are not done by universities, this could potentially be also a roadmap. It's like, okay, we've done this, but we haven't done any of this. Of the ones that we haven't done, do we want to do any of them? And how do we prioritize them? Another level will be to be able to measure impact, but honestly, we're not there yet.
Yes, I think it's such a great performance management tool. You got to start somewhere, right? So I really like what you said about universities being able to actually set a vision for themselves, and maybe first to begin with choose the SDGs that they would like to focus on, or they've been already doing that work. And as they develop further, they can manage their performance, they can evaluate their performance. That sounds actually like a very comprehensive tool that I hope will be helpful for everyone. And yeah, we can't wait for it to be launched. And I can imagine it's also great to be able to continuously collect the feedback from the users. It's almost like it's being co-created with everyone. That sounds great.
It has been.
With that in mind, I actually also wanted to ask how we can make sure to have the conversation around policy innovation and advocacy around sustainable development as part of higher education development too. So we have already discussed those 4 domains, but specifically around research and education within the universities. How can they serve as catalysts for policy innovation in this realm of sustainability?
We've traditionally struggled to get research and education outputs or results to policymakers. And as much as we all would love to say that all policy is evidence-based and that universities have a very important role in shaping policy making, it's actually not that common. How is this happening, or how we see this happening in even when uncommon? In some places, because universities are having more programs on sustainability, they're eventually going to be more civil servants that are going to be specialized in sustainability or with sustainability skills if they have taken these additional courses that we've mentioned before. And HEIs can, and some of them are also influencing governments through the civil servants capacity building as a lifelong learning activity. Universities are offering governments courses on sustainability for policymakers or for civil servants in general. And universities are partnering with government as well for consultancies or technical cooperation or technical support in sustainability related topics that are also becoming more common. And some universities are becoming very good at monitoring relevant either social or environmental indicators related with the SDGs, and then offering this knowledge to government as well, so they can use it to then make policies. We're seeing some joint innovation centers or hubs in sustainability topics between governments and universities, and also universities or the research community more in general. It's starting to be in a more official way, sitting in advisory boards for sustainability within governments. There are these chief scientists that exist in some countries, for example, here in Australia and the UK as well. And they are at the end also helping translate research findings into policy actions or policy implications. These activities at the end, again, just examples, but I'd like to make the point that they would be easier if they're not just one-off transactions. But if there is a strategic and permanent relationship between universities and policymakers, because they trust and the commitment that would happen in that relationship would greatly facilitate this influence. So hopefully we're talking that influence in a more permanent basis.
I would like to take that collaboration across the boards and maybe explore a little bit together with you. How do you think that global collaboration between the universities can be helpful for achieving sustainable development goal? Is there any knowledge exchange that we observe in between those ecosystems? And how actually is important global collaboration between the universities and other actors in achieving sustainable development goals?
When we're doing workshops or some interactive dynamic presentations, I always ask, what do people think is the most important SDG? Because I tend to be surrounded by university people. They say SDG 4, like education, which of course underpins a lot of them. But for me, the key one, it's SDG 17. This is partnership for the goals, because this is already telling us that the SDGs won't be achieved with individuals or organizations working in isolation. So partnerships, alliances are needed in order to achieve the goals. Universities obviously are those organizations that are gradually also starting collaborating with others for the SDGs. Universities have a long tradition of collaborating, particularly with other universities. So this is just about in which topic you collaborate on. I think it's important that they find the right partners. So they find other organizations that care about the same SDGs as them, but that they have different and maybe complementary resources. These can be other universities. There are great examples of universities in Peru, Brazil, and Colombia that share a border around the Amazon that are collaborating in sustainability topics. There are excellent examples of universities and businesses that are collaborating in, for example, in smart mobility, the cooperation with governments in the ways, for example, that I've described above, but also cooperation with societies, directly with communities via this volunteering, via the engagement of the communities in research. What is clear is that universities, more than ever, need to be open to cooperate with others, because this will benefit them, this will benefit their partners, and overall the society, all of us by default. There are many aspects in which collaboration is just a multiplier effect and should be the way to go.
Yeah, and those initiatives shouldn't be pursued in isolation, I would guess. So hopefully collaboration would be embraced at all levels. So now I wanted to ask how actually universities can mobilize their internal population, so to say. For example, how can university engage better students, the faculty members in sustainability initiative, and why we also think this involvement is crucial?
I might have to refer, just to keep the answer short, to the guidelines before. In the guidelines, constantly talk about consultations, engagement, co-design, agreements. It talks about involvement, both academics and students, in the sustainability transition in each of the 10 steps. So there, the guideline will give you the specifics about how to do it, like again, through communication, through co-designing, and different activities that are mentioned in there. So now the SDGs are by definition interdisciplinary. So from that perspective, they are also very useful to mix students and academics from different faculties or schools that usually work in isolation, and to bring them together. It's a very good excuse to mix people that often do not meet each other and do not work together. But overall, the involvement in all this process is critical, because this can never be a top-down approach, and we need both students and academics that feel the ownership of this and that feel empowered through the process.
What a great message. I think it's very helpful and very instrumental also for us to know how to approach this. Then the question would be, what is the role professional and administrative staff play and support students and academics in advancing sustainability efforts within the institutions?
The management role of the universities is often overlooked as a potential area to contribute to the SDGs. As any other organization, they can directly contribute to the improvement of sustainability within their own campus, for example, through green infrastructures, good employment conditions for their employees. We're actually about to publish something about universities as employers related with SDG 8. Also have good gender policies, have well-being programs for their student and the staff, having scholarships that contributes to SDG 4, choosing sustainable providers and sustainable partners. These are, again, only examples. You can refer to a fourth, almost 100 of the 400 indicators that are related to management. And these are only some examples in ways that HEIs can be a role model for other organizations, can lead the way towards a more sustainable future. And I go back to your initial point, can walk the talk.
I would be very curious to hear your personal maybe standpoint, but also UNESCO's vision of the future. Do we see actually universities moving towards that direction in a more systemic way? So what do you envision as the future of sustainable development within the higher education?
Okay, by all means, it's going to be a personal response, not an institutional one. I am hopeful. I have to be. I am seeing how more universities gradually, but many more universities, and in the last 2-3 years, we could say in an exponential way, are not just caring about this topic and saying that they do care about it, but actually putting actions in place. We do see, for example, how more and more universities have sustainability offices that take care of this topic, and sometimes even vice rector at the vice rector level, so at a very high level within the organization, they are caring about this topic, which is transversal. In the future, I'd like to see how universities are institutionalizing sustainability within their organizations, which currently, to be honest, is mostly about isolated activities and bottom-up approaches here and there. I love to see how more universities are sharing good practices, are learning from each other. Sometimes within the universities, sometimes we don't know what is going on at other parts of the university, particularly the big ones, but also with other universities. I love to see how more universities are supporting sustainable entrepreneurships, whether these are startups or spin-offs. And I would love to see how we manage to crack integrating the SDGs into the curriculum. So it's not just, oh, we just have a course of the SDGs and we're going to tell people what the SDGs is about, which is nice, but it's only a starting point. Is how can we create sustainable mindsets? We universities need to be aware of the potential. The future talent is there. The future innovation is there. And that gives you a lot of power that used in the right way can really change the world. I always have said that if someone can save us from ourselves, those are going to be universities.
That's very inspirational, and I'm sharing this vision with you, Victoria. But for those universities that are just starting their journey towards sustainability, what would be your humble advice?
For those that are starting, I would say start checking what you're currently doing. So don't think that you start from scratch. And also don't think that sustainability is something new or too different from what you've done before, because universities have always cared about gender, about the environment somehow. So these are not foreign, new, different topics. This is just a framework. So that's why being conscious about what you're already doing, it will set you in a very nice track to say, hey, we're not starting from scratch. Then I will say that this should not be overwhelming. So do not think that you have to contribute to the 17 SDGs. Choose a focus. It's either based on your current strengths or is based on your vision or what type of university you want to be in the future. And I guess if I could direct help in any way, there are 10 steps that could be followed for the implementation of that transition within the university. But do not do this alone. Empower your students, empower your staff, and make them have ownership of this process as well, because it's a common goal for all of us. So that's how it should be perceived. The achievement of the SDGs, or at least the progress towards them, requires effort from all the organizations in society, we could say. Universities are particularly crucial because sustainable development cannot happen without research, talent, innovation, or trained professional and leaders that have the necessary knowledge and skills, but also values to lead this transformation. And all that is within universities.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And thank you so much for everyone who joined today.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Baljan. You know, it's always a pleasure for me to speak about these topics and to be here with you with the UIN, my old house.
Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion. Follow UIN on LinkedIn, and if you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate and review in your podcast platform of choice to help other people find this content too.